Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is April 9th. On this day in 2014, a day that began like any other at Franklin Regional High School in Murrysville, Pennsylvania, ended in horror. In a matter of minutes, what should have been a normal school morning turned into a nightmare when a 16-year-old student launched a violent stabbing attack inside the school, leaving 21 students and a security guard injured. It's a case that rattled the community, stunned the nation, and left everyone asking, how could something like this happen? And why? Let's get started. Nestled in the quiet suburb of Murrysville, Pennsylvania, about 18 miles east of Pittsburgh, Franklin Regional High School was known as a place where students could thrive. With a strong reputation for academics and a wide range of extracurricular activities, it was the kind of schools where families felt confident sending their kids each day. Before the events of April 9th, 2014, Franklin Regional had no history of serious violence. For students and parents alike, it felt like a safe, close-knit environment. Just another typical high school in a community that prided itself on being tight and supportive. That morning, students filed in, chatting with friends, heading to their lockers, and getting ready for the day. But just after 7:13 a.m., everything changed. That's when 16-year-old sophomore Alex Hribal walked into a crowded hallway on the first floor, right near the science wing, and began a violent rampage. Armed with two large kitchen knives, he began attacking his fellow students, moving quickly and with a sense of purpose. It all happened during the morning rush, one of the busiest times of the school day. The hallways were packed with students going to class or catching up before the bell. Many of them didn't even know what was happening. Some were stabbed from behind, and others turned to run but still couldn't escape. Panic spread almost instantly. Students screamed, bloody teens stumbled into classrooms, and teachers rushed to lock the doors and help the injured. Surveillance footage and witness accounts would later reveal how terrifying Hribal was. He wasn't targeting anyone in particular. This wasn't personal. It was random, and that randomness somehow made it even more terrifying. He struck students in their backs, torsos, and abdomens, some of the wounds coming within millimeters of major organs. 4 of the students were critically injured. One 14-year-old boy had his liver punctured and his diaphragm slashed. The entire attack lasted only about 4 or 5 minutes, but in that time, Hribal had left a hallway full of chaos. Thankfully, people acted fast. One of the school's assistant principals, Sam King, heard the commotion and ran straight toward it. And while he was trying to stop the attack, he was stabbed too. But despite this, he managed to wrestle Hribal to the ground near the school library. Senior student Ian Griffith jumped in to help restrain him until security and police arrived. Witnesses Hribal didn't shout or scream during the rampage. He just moved with a kind of eerie calm. And when he was finally subdued, his words chilled everyone around him. Quote, "My work is not done. I have more people to kill." End quote. As first responders flooded the school, students poured out in waves. Some were carried by classmates, others ran for their lives. Many huddled inside classrooms, texting parents, unsure if the danger had passed. Ambulances lined the school grounds. The injured were rushed to hospitals across the region, including Forbes Regional Hospital and UPMC Children's in Pittsburgh. In total, 21 students and 1 security guard were hurt. Several needed emergency surgery. But somehow, despite the number of victims and the severity of their injuries, no one died. Doctors later credited the swift emergency response, the bravery of staff and students, and maybe just sheer luck. It was one of the worst mass stabbings in American school history, and it left a lasting scar, not just on the school, but on the entire community. In the days that followed, questions began to swirl. How had this happened? And could it have been prevented? Later, crisis counselors were brought in to help students, staff, and parents begin to process what they had just lived through. The schools shut down for several days, and when it finally reopened, it was a different place. There were new security measures, a quieter atmosphere, and an unspoken understanding among students and teachers that things would never fully return to how they were. Still, the community came together. Vigils were held in local churches and parks where neighbors lit candles, prayed, and wept together. Online, students and parents flooded social media with messages of support, offering prayers for the injured and thanking those who had stepped up in the face of horror. Assistant Principal Sam King and Senior Ian Griffith were hailed as heroes. Despite being stabbed himself, King didn't hesitate to confront the attacker, and Ian risked his own safety to help subdue him. Their bravery likely prevented even more injuries and possibly deaths. So who was the kid behind this devastating attack? At first glance, Alex Hribal seemed like just another teenager. He was 16 years old and a sophomore at Franklin Regional. To most of his classmates and even to some of his teachers, he was quiet, polite, and a little withdrawn. But nothing that raised any major red flags. He wasn't a troublemaker, he didn't use drugs, and he wasn't involved with gangs or violence. If anything, he was the kind of student that people barely noticed. But what no one ever saw, what no one could see, was the storm that had been building behind that reserved demeanor. After the attack, as investigators searched Hribal's home, they uncovered a disturbing collection of handwritten notes and journals. These weren't impulsive scribbles or angry rants. They were detailed plans. Some were written as early as September 2013, showing that Hribal had been planning the stabbing for more than 6 months. In these writings, he described feeling isolated, misunderstood, and increasingly angry. He didn't name specific targets. His intent wasn't personal. It was something darker. A desire to cause mass harm and be remembered for it. He idolized the Columbine shooters, referencing Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris in reverent tones. The date of his attack, April 9th, was just days away from the Columbine anniversary. Hribal seemed to believe he was part of something larger. In his mind, he was stepping into a role that he had been preparing for months. But what he was really experiencing, mental health experts later revealed, was untreated and severe psychological illness. Evaluations diagnosed him with major depressive disorder, along with symptoms on the schizophrenia spectrum, delusions, hallucinations, and deep-rooted paranoia. His defense team pushed for him to be tried as a juvenile, arguing that his mental health struggles and young age, remember he was just 16, should be taken into account. But given the level of planning, the number of victims, and the sheer scale of the violence, the court ruled that he would be tried as an adult. It was a controversial decision and one that sparked wider conversations about how we treat young offenders in our justice system. Throughout the court process, Hribal was largely expressionless. Survivors had a chance to speak about the lasting impact of that day. The trauma, the anxiety, the difficult returning to a place where they had once felt safe. When it was his turn to speak, Hribal offered an apology. He said he was sorry for what he had done and wished that he could undo it. But his flat affect and minimal emotion left many questioning the depth of his remorse. In 2018, Alex Hribal pleaded guilty to 21 counts of attempted homicide and 21 counts of aggravated assault. He was sentenced to 23.5 to 60 years in prison and isn't eligible for parole until 2037. He was also ordered to pay nearly $270,000 in restitution to help cover medical costs and continued care for the victims he hurt. Today, Hribal is serving his sentence in a Pennsylvania state prison. Beyond the verdict, Hribal's case reignited important conversations about how the justice system handles youth violence, about the line between punishment and rehabilitation, and about how we as a society care for young people struggling with mental illness. His story remains a sobering example of what can happen when warning signs go unnoticed and when support systems fail to reach somebody who is quietly falling apart. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day, True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!